UFC 5, April 7th, 1995, starts with a little highlight package from UFC 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Takes us through a little journey of how we've managed to get to this point. We then open to the city of Charlotte, North Carolina, and to a very sad looking Independence Arena, or Charlotte Coliseum for the old time fans here. I don't know why they chose that angle that shows all those empty seats, but anyway, Bruce Beck is on commentary, joined by Jim Brown in his fucking hat again. Jim Blatnick is also here. So UFC 5, Return of the Beast, they run through the rules here quickly. It's another 8-person bracket this time, thank God. And only Dan Severn is a returning fighter in the tournament, with Royce, Gracie and Ken Shamrock being in the SuperFight. And we will get to that SuperFight later. But our first fight now is Andy Anderson, allegedly 86-0 with all 86 being knockout wins. His opponent is John Hess, who is clearly autistic. He practices his own martial arts, SAFTA, Scientific Aggressive Fighting Technology of America. I wonder if that ever caught on. Hess is a 4th degree black belt, by the way, in a martial art that he made up with no sanctioned record, but he says he's never lost a fight, but he also says he's in tremendous shape. So much technique in the opening exchanges, John Hess literally will not stop poking Anderson in the eyes and is the most uncoordinated person I have ever seen. But he ends up getting the finish because his opponent is blind as fuck, and he runs a Gracie train straight to the back. Hess would then later get fined $2,000 after the event for his performance, by the way, all those eye pokes. But he's through to the next round, so I doubt he gives a fuck. And for all the complaining that we have about eye pokes now, they were even a problem back here in 1995, and we still haven't found out a way to stop people from doing them. Next up, we have Todd Medina, the first guy to have a Bruce Lee Jeet Kune Do background, and Beck says that he trains with Joe Son and Chemo, who are currently 0-2 at this point, but they are my favourites. But he is another believer and says all his power tonight will come from the Lord. But he doesn't come out with Joe Son, he doesn't come out with Chemo, or have a cross on his back, or a big Bible verse hanging off a sign. So, safe to say, I am very disappointed. Larry Thunderfoot Curitin is a firefighter, right? 26 wins, 23 knockouts. With a name like Thunderfoot, you would think his best weapon would be a high kick, but he's telling everyone to watch out for his straight right hand. Medina shoots right away, Thunderfoot tries a choke, Medina breaks, and then just spams headbutts. Somehow we've shifted to the middle of the octagon here without ever leaving guard. Medina here tries for the Hackney method, misses his dick, but just before putting his forearm on Thunderfoot's neck, headbutting him, Thunderfoot taps before the 3-minute mark. Next up, we have the Russian bear Oleg Taktarov of Bad Boys 2 fame. He was the assistant to the Russian nightclub owner and drug dealer, right? Just as a side note. But tonight, this is his first time in America. He hasn't lost a fight in 10 years. He's a Sambo fighter, and he's out here in joggers and gi combo. Love that. His opponent is clearly on the spectrum. Paramedic by day, fighter by night. Ernest Verdicia is out here with his whole gang of EMTs in his corner. He's a big karate guy. He says his opponent is going to need their help when he's done with them. We'll see how that plays out. Holy shit, Ernest takes down Taktarov. I did not expect that, but wow. This is not what we need with a Gracie and Shamrock fight later. Ernest tries to push the action and loses control. Taktarov lays there before taking Ernest over because he's no idea what he's doing on the ground, so why did he shoot in the first place? Taktarov gets the choke and gets the win in 2.5 minutes. Dan Severn's back, and he's got a whole video package here trying to promote Dan Severn. Not only naming the event after him, UFC 5 Return of the Beast, but they have a lot of highlights of him here in his previous events. They're doing their best to build him up, and Jesus Christ, yes, they are trying their best to give Severn wins here. Look at this fucking guy. Joe Charles from California, he has fucking Timbs on with whatever the fuck else he's wearing. Dan Severn is good enough to beat actual guys without wheeling out the fucking Black Aladdin here, right? So the fight starts, Severn takes down Charles into side control, starts throwing knees at Charles' head, he loses position, they end up in guard, Charles tries an armbar, he tries a triangle, before Severn takes his back, gets the rear naked choke on him in brutal fashion, and he advances to the semi-finals. the double take that I had to do when commentary said that Joe Charles was a returning fighter, I was like, no, there is no way I would have forgotten this guy. But apparently he was in one of the alternate matches. They weren't actually televised on the pay-per-view, so they're not on Fight Pass. That's why I haven't seen this guy before. But Jesus Christ, that caught me off guard when he was on the screen. Here are the semi-finalists. John Hess is out, he hurt his hand, and Dave Beneteau is in. He beat his opponent Asbel Cancio in 21 seconds in brutal fashion. Feel free to step in at any point, ref. About now, maybe's aye, maybe's no. Todd Medina is back for the semi-final. He does a half-hour jumping rope, 2 hours of Jeet Kune Do, 1 hour of jiu-jitsu, and then he lifts weights after that. I thought this guy was like employed. Like, this is the daily itinerary of someone who is unemployed as fuck. Dave takes him down, gets into side control, throws a few strikes, gets into mount, throws some more strikes, and Medina's corner throws in the towel in just over 2 minutes. The next semi-final is Oleg Taktarov versus Dan Severn, Russian Bear versus the Beast. We get another video package for Dan Severn before he comes out. It's him in the gym and in an interview where he says he held back in UFC 4, but he will not tonight. Again, he's wiping his armpits first before wiping his face. Like, the order is all fucked up here. I hope it's a new shirt he has on every time. I hope he packs 3 shirts and it's not just all his sweat throughout the night. This lady at the side of the cage is apparently Severn's manager, Phyllis. Severn grabs Taktarov, takes him down, knees to the head, actually throws strikes here with some intent. That's different for Severn. About 2 minutes in, Severn ends up in guard. Taktarov looks for the armbar while Severn drops knees on Taktarov's eye. Whenever he can, Taktarov is bleeding quite badly here. Severn continues to throw punches. Taktarov won't let go of the arm. Taktarov's face is a mess now at this point. He is bleeding badly. John McCarthy calls the fight, and Severn is through to the final to face Dave Beneteau. Commentators seemed really concerned the way they were running through all the medical personnel they have on site here. They said that they have 2 life support units on standby here just in case. Like, I don't know if it's that bad yet, guys, right? In full disclosure here, right, I watched the first half of this event, right? I had to leave, I had to come back. While I was away, I made a thumbnail, right? Now, this event, UFC 5, Return of the Beast, the thumbnail heavily featured Dan Severn, right? And then I came back, and then I watched the SuperFight, and I cannot let these two, right, Shamrock and Gracie, I can't let that slide, right? I cannot let these transgressions against humanity slide without making my point very fucking clear about what I think of these two, right? First, let's look at the positives, right? A new feature of these UFC events is the SuperFight, right? I love this idea. Gives the 2 guys in the final a chance to rest before the fight, making it more fair on the guy in the second semi-final. And you get to market a SuperFight between your biggest names. What would typically happen is the SuperFight champion would face the tournament winner. In this case, we have Gracie versus Shamrock. Shamrock never won a tournament, but he is one of the biggest names that UFC felt was marketable, so this was the biggest matchup they could make. The context of the SuperFight here, where UFC get to put their stars against each other, so even if you don't know anyone in the tournament, you can be excited about the SuperFight, whilst a new star is then made by winning the tournament. This is sort of a precursor to the modern day BMF belt, but the BMF belt is just made in theory for a specific style of fighter, as opposed to just let's get different stars from different weight classes in to make some dream matches like happen at a catchweight. I would love to have seen this for an Alex Pereira-Jones fight. I thought it would have been so gimmicky, but to bring back a SuperFight title, it feels like a generational SuperFight, so I prefer the sound of a SuperFight title instead of a BMF belt. I think the SuperFight idea is fun. Speaking of fun, this fight was not it, right? We have not left guard this entire time, right? I had the Fight Pass livestream on the other night, and they'd put on the 90-minute fight between Gracie and Sakuraba. So my patience for these fights where Gracie and his opponent just nap on the floor whilst Royce throws some kidney shots with his heel, my patience for that right now is through the floor, okay? About the 11-minute mark, I started watching this at like 1.5 speed, and these guys are still moving as though they're in quicksand. Commentators are trying to sell this by saying, in a Rogan style, right, where it's like, this isn't boring, they're just waiting for the other one to do something, they're just waiting to make a move. So he literally said in a roundabout way, folks, these guys are sitting here doing nothing. This made me feel so blessed to have sat through DDP Hamza and Islam JDM. Like, we are eating so good right now because at least they break them up every 5 minutes when the round ends. I sat through this shit for 30 minutes before the round ended. And then we went to a 5-minute overtime. I am punching the air at this point. Bruce Beck says that this is pure skill on display and the early boos have stopped. He thinks the people now understand what is happening and they respect the athletes. No, Bruce, they are bored as fuck. They have been beaten into such a submission that they are now dead silent. Joe Rogan posted an old equipment box recently on his Instagram, right? And some guy in the comments was like, oh yes, Royce Gracie, the real GOAT of MMA. I guarantee you this guy has either seen Royce Gracie's name winning these tournaments or heard that he's a pioneer of this bullshit style and thinks, oh yeah, that guy's the GOAT, like he's the hipster's choice of, oh well, if you know, you know, right? I bet you he has not watched this shit with his own eyes. He has not wasted the precious time in his life watching Royce Gracie beat these fucking idiots in the early tournaments and then lie there grabbing his sleeve doing fuck all and nothing against the likes of Severn and Shamrock. Now, I said in one of my last retro reviews that Ken Shamrock was on fraud watch because he enjoys just sitting in his opponent's guard way too much. He has never heard of half guard in his fucking life. I said he was on thin ice. Well, the fucking pod of orca whales have smashed the fuck out of the ice that he was on. He is done for. I am finished defending this guy just because I like him. He is also responsible for this complete waste of time. I cannot believe that he gets rewarded with another super fight at UFC 6. But good lord, I already know what's coming at UFC 9. I don't know how I'll be able to cope. Thankfully, this is the last time we see Royce Gracie in the UFC for a long time. He only left because Rory and Gracie, the guy who was setting up these events, he left because he didn't like that they were bringing in time limits. He wanted more of this, right? So, long story short, no, Royce Gracie is not the GOAT. Oh, and by the way, we sat there for 30 minutes, 5 minutes overtime, and they called it a draw. This is the worst fucking fight of all time. I referenced Gracie and Sakuraba fight, right? Which was also bullshit. But at least Sakuraba won that fight. At least you got to see Royce Gracie quit on the stool because he couldn't walk. This was easily the worst fight I have ever seen. And I know we have another Shamrock Severn barn burner in a few events' time. But we'll see when we get there. It cannot be worse than this, can it? Crowd literally would not stop booing and chanting bullshit. The commentary seems perplexed as to why this is happening. They cannot fathom that nobody wanted to watch two guys lie on top of each other doing nothing for over half a fucking hour. I cannot wait for Jim Brown to be booted off of commentary. This guy is insufferable, right? But we have arrived at the UFC 5 Return of the Beast tournament final. $50,000 on the line. Dan Severn versus the alternate Dave Beneteau. There are no points for guessing who wins this fight, folks. They clinch, Severn presses Dave against the cage. After a couple of minutes, he then gets the trip. Severn gets into side control and he gets the key lock to win after 3 minutes. Dan Severn gets his check, he gets his belts. Commentary cannot help but mention that Royce Gracie beat Dan Severn at UFC 4. Fuck these guys. And that's it, folks. That was UFC 5 Return of the Beast. All in all, believe it or not, I actually enjoyed the tournament. The tournament was probably the best one that they've put together since UFC 3. And the super fight really shit the bed and dragged down what was otherwise pretty good and pretty entertaining. Nothing really outstayed its welcome in the tournament, at least. But my god, the commentary at this point in the game is insufferable. Thank fucking god Jim Brown is so close to leaving us, along with Royce Gracie. So things are about to get better to watch and easier to listen to. Royce Gracie is one of their guys, right, that can draw people to the building. They've positioned him as a name. But now we can get new guys that are hopefully more entertaining to watch. And not to worry, folks, because we are about to get that new star as Tank Abbott debuts in the octagon, and for the first time in the super fight, we will see Ken Shamrock against Dan Severn. But not to worry, this is actually the watchable fight between the two. It is better than the SuperFight rematch. I mean, the rematch is the one that I'm actually worried about. But until next time, folks, at UFC 6, Clash of the Titans, thank you for watching. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I will see you all next time.